If you walk down that aisle, you're no longer my daughter. I watched my mother's words hit my sister like physical blows, each syllable landing with devastating precision, just 3 hours before her wedding. Kate stood there in her wedding dress, a $5,000 masterpiece of lace and tulle, tears threatening to ruin her perfectly applied makeup. The bridal suite of the Four Seasons had suddenly become a battlefield, and I, as maid of honor, was caught in the crossfire. All because Kate had dared to invite our father's new wife to the wedding. Looking back now, 6 months after what was supposed to be the happiest day of my sister's life, I realized that moment in the bridal suite was just the beginning. What unfolded over the next 12 hours would reshape our family forever, testing bonds we thought unbreakable and revealing truths we'd spent years trying to ignore. But let me start from the beginning, because to understand how we got to that moment, my sister in tears, my mother issuing ultimatums, and me standing there with a champagne flute in one hand and my phone in the other, frantically texting the wedding planner, you need to understand our family. The Winters were never what you'd call a normal family. On the surface, we had it all: the sprawling suburban home, the country club memberships, the private school education. My father, Michael, built his law firm from scratch into one of Boston's most prestigious practices. My mother, Eleanor, was the perfect lawyer's wife, serving on charity boards and hosting dinner parties that were the talk of our social circle. Kate and I grew up in a world of privilege, but also under the weight of expectations so heavy they sometimes felt suffocating. Then, 3 years ago, the carefully constructed facade cracked. Dad left Mom for his much younger associate, Jennifer. The divorce was messy, public, and brutal. Mom got the house and a generous settlement, but Dad got something far more valuable: his freedom. He married Jennifer 6 months later, and suddenly, our family dynamic shifted from complicated to nuclear. Kate handled it better than I did, while I sided with Mom, refusing to speak to Dad for months. Kate maintained relationships with both parents. They're both still our parents, she'd say, and their choices don't change that. Her grace in handling the situation only highlighted my own struggle with forgiveness. When Kate met Thomas at a charity gala 2 years ago, it felt like the universe was finally giving our family something to celebrate. Thomas was everything we could have hoped for: successful, kind, and most importantly, he adored Kate. Their engagement after a year of dating should have been a moment of pure joy. Instead, it became the catalyst for a new wave of family drama. The problems started with the guest list. Kate wanted an intimate wedding with just 150 guests at the Four Seasons Boston. She envisioned a classic affair that would honor both families' traditions while creating new ones. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Mom insisted on inviting every social connection she'd maintained through the divorce, all 200 of them. These people supported me when your father abandoned us, she'd say, wielding guilt like a weapon. It would be a slap in the face not to include them. Dad, meanwhile, wanted to bring Jennifer. She's my wife now, he argued during one particularly tense phone call. You can't expect me to attend my own daughter's wedding alone. Kate, trying to please everyone while staying true to her vision, was caught in an impossible position, and I, as maid of honor, had a front row seat to the unfolding disaster. The months leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in family dysfunction. Every decision became a battlefield. The seating arrangement alone required diplomatic skills that would have impressed the United Nations. Mom refused to be seated anywhere she might have to see Dad and Jennifer. Dad insisted on being at the parents' table because tradition. The solution? 2 parents' tables, carefully positioned at opposite ends of the ballroom, with strict traffic patterns planned to minimize potential encounters. But the real drama started 3 days before the wedding, when the final guest list was distributed to the vendors. Mom, who had somehow obtained a copy, despite it being confidential, discovered that not only was Jennifer attending, but she was being treated as a full family member, including being included in some of the formal photos. The phone calls started at midnight. How could you do this to me? Mom sobbed into the phone. After everything we've been through, you're giving that woman legitimacy. Kate, exhausted from last-minute preparations and final dress fittings, tried to reason with her. Mom, she's Dad's wife. This isn't about her or you, it's about having the people we love present on our special day. The people we love. Mom's voice turned cold. Did you love her when she was sleeping with your father while he was still married to me? That conversation ended with Kate in tears and me spending the night in her apartment. trying to convince her that eloping wasn't the answer. The rehearsal dinner the next night was a study in careful choreography. The wedding planner, Sandra, deserved a medal for managing to keep Mom and Dad's family on opposite sides of the restaurant without making it obvious to the other guests. But even her skills couldn't prevent the whispers, the pointed looks, and the tension that hung in the air like heavy perfume. I watched Kate push her food around her plate, her engagement ring catching the light as she gripped her fork too tightly. Thomas, bless him, maintained his calm throughout the evening, his hand never leaving the small of her back, a quiet reminder that she wasn't alone in this storm. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect October day in Boston. The bridal suite at the Four Seasons was a flurry of activity by 8 a.m. Hairstylists, makeup artists, and photographers moved in carefully orchestrated chaos while Kate's 6 bridesmaids, including me, sipped mimosas and tried to maintain an atmosphere of celebration. Kate looked radiant, even before the makeup and hair were done. There's something about a bride on her wedding day, a glow that comes from within, a happiness that can't be dimmed by external drama, or so I thought. Everything was going smoothly until Mom arrived at 11 a.m. She took one look at the getting ready schedule and noticed that Jennifer was slated to join the extended family photos at 2 p.m. That's when she dropped her ultimatum. If you walk down that aisle with that woman in attendance, you're no longer my daughter. The suite fell silent. The makeup artist froze, brush midair, even the photographer lowered her camera, unsure whether to document this moment or pretend it wasn't happening. Kate's face crumpled, and I saw the little girl who used to cry when our parents fought emerging from behind the poised bride. Mom, please, she whispered, not today. But Mom was beyond reason. Years of hurt, betrayal, and bitterness had crystallized into this moment. Choose, she said, her or me. That's when something in me snapped. Enough. My voice cut through the tension like a knife. Everyone out. Now. To my surprise, they listened. The vendors quickly gathered their things and filed out, leaving just me, Kate, and our mother in the suite. I turned to Mom, years of pent-up frustration finally finding their voice. This isn't about you. It's not about Dad, or Jennifer, or anyone else. This is Kate's day, the day she marries the man she loves. And if you can't set aside your pain for 6 hours to celebrate your daughter's happiness, then maybe you're the one who needs to leave. Mom stared at me, shocked. I'd always been the peacekeeper, the one who tried to smooth things over. But watching her try to destroy what should have been one of the happiest days of Kate's life had awakened something fierce in me. Catherine, Mom started, using Kate's full name, always a warning sign. You don't understand what it's like to be betrayed. No, Mom, Kate interrupted, finding her voice. You don't understand. I love you. I will always love you. But I also love Dad. And yes, I've even grown to care about Jennifer. They're all part of my family now. And I want my whole family at my wedding. If you can't accept that, then, she took a deep breath, then I'll miss you today. But this wedding is happening either way. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom picked up her purse, her movements deliberately slow. I see, she said, her voice ice cold. Well, I hope you're both happy with your choices. She walked to the door, paused, and added, don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces when this all falls apart. The door clicked shut behind her with a finality that felt like a physical blow. Kate collapsed into my arms, her body shaking with sobs. We stood there for what felt like hours but must have been only minutes, her tears soaking into my silk robe. What do we do now? She whispered. I pulled back, looked at my sister, this strong, beautiful woman who had somehow maintained her compassion through years of family warfare, and made a decision. Now, I said, reaching for my phone, we fix your makeup, get you married to the love of your life, and show everyone what real grace looks like. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Sandra, the wedding planner, reworked the ceremony seating to fill the gap left by Mom and her side of the family because, of course, Mom's entire contingent left with her. The photographer adjusted the photo schedule. The florist repurposed Mom's corsage for Jennifer's mother, who had unexpectedly stepped into a more prominent role. And through it all, Kate maintained a dignity that amazed me. She walked down the aisle on Dad's arm, her head held high, her smile genuine as she caught sight of Thomas waiting for her. The ceremony was beautiful, personal, and perfect even without Mom there. During the reception, I watched as Kate and Thomas moved among their guests, greeting everyone with genuine warmth. I saw Dad dancing with Jennifer, looking happier than he had in years. I saw Thomas's family embracing Kate as one of their own, filling the void left by our mother's absence. But it was during my maid of honor speech that I truly understood the significance of what had happened that day. Love, I said, raising my glass, comes in many forms. Sometimes it's dramatic and passionate, like Kate and Thomas's love story. Sometimes it's quiet and steady, like the love between siblings. And sometimes, love means having the courage to choose happiness over tradition, peace over conflict, and future over past. I saw Kate's eyes fill with tears, happy ones this time, as I continued. Today, we're not just celebrating a wedding. We're celebrating the kind of love that's strong enough to weather any storm, brave enough to forge new paths, and wise enough to know that family isn't just about blood, it's about choice. The aftermath of the wedding was both better and worse than we expected. Mom maintained her silence for months, missing holidays, birthdays, and the announcement of Kate's pregnancy. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with a card on Kate's birthday, then a brief phone call, and finally, 6 months after the wedding, a request to meet for coffee. I was there for that meeting, watching as Mom and Kate tentatively rebuilt their relationship. It wasn't perfect, there were still moments of tension, especially when Dad or Jennifer came up in conversation. But it was a start. Looking back now, I realized that what happened at Kate's wedding wasn't just about Mom's ultimatum or Dad's new wife. It was about breaking free from toxic patterns that had defined our family for generations. It was about choosing love over pride, growth over stagnation, and peace over being right. Kate and Thomas just celebrated their first anniversary. The party was smaller than the wedding, but more meaningful in many ways. Mom came, staying only briefly but making an effort to be civil to Dad and Jennifer. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As for me, I learned more about love, family, and courage in those 12 hours than I had in the previous 30 years. I learned that sometimes the strongest love isn't the kind that holds on tight, but the kind that knows when to let go. I learned that family isn't just who we're born to, but who we choose to become. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most beautiful moments in life come not despite the drama, but because of how we choose to handle it. Kate's wedding didn't go as planned. There was no perfect family photo, no mother-daughter dance, no tearful maternal blessing, but what we got instead was perhaps more valuable, a lesson in standing up for what's right, in choosing love over obligation, and in the power of being true to ourselves. Today, when people ask about the wedding, I don't tell them about the drama in the bridal suite, or the empty seats where Mom's family should have been. Instead, I tell them about my sister, radiant in her wedding dress, choosing love over fear. I tell them about a family learning to redefine itself, about the courage it takes to break old patterns, and about the peace that comes from finally being honest about who we are and what we want. Because in the end, that's what family drama at a wedding taught me. Sometimes the most important traditions are the ones we have the courage to break. And the strongest families are the ones that can survive being broken and reformed into something new. Kate and Thomas are expecting their first child in 3 months. Mom is cautiously excited about becoming a grandmother. Dad and Jennifer have been surprisingly supportive, even offering to help with the nursery. And me? I'm just grateful to have front row seats to watching my family learn, grow, and heal. After all, isn't that what real love stories are about?